Get out of my pool.
Cameron Parker looked up from his book.
Are you deaf? I said out, before you contaminated the whole deep end.
Ma'am,
Don't ma'am me! I can smell you from here. What is that? Sweat? Cologne from the dollar store? God, it's disgusting.
She pinched her nose, stepped back like he was rot.
I own a home on Linden Court.
You own a home, sure. And I'm the Queen of England.
She raised her phone, thumb on the 9.
I'm calling
the
real
police.
police. Now crawl out before I drag you out myself.
Cameron set his book down.
set his book down.
Calm. Quiet.
Quiet.
Ma'am, put the phone down, please.
Please? She smiled and dialed. What she didn't know, the deed to her house had his signature on it. Before we go any further, you need to understand something about Parker Ridge Estates. It wasn't just a neighborhood. It was the kind of place that put estates on its sign, like a promise. 162 homes on 38 acres of rolling Carolina green, tucked off Highway 54 just outside Raleigh. Gated entrance, stone pillars at the front, a carved wooden sign with the community's name burned deep into the oak. If you drove past it twice a day for 6 years, you'd stop seeing the name. Your eyes would slide right over it. That detail is going to matter later. Remember it. The houses started at $800,000. The clubhouse had marble floors. The pool at the center of our story, sat at the bottom of a landscaped slope surrounded by crepe myrtles and teak loungers. Key fob access only. Surveillance camera above the gate. A hand-painted sign at the entrance that read, "Residents and accompanied guests only." This was the world Cameron Parker walked into 3 weeks before our story begins. He closed on the biggest house at the end of Linden Court on a Tuesday. Paid cash. 38 years old, tall, soft-spoken, the kind of man who reads on weekends and takes his coffee black. He moved in quietly, waved at neighbors. Most of them waved back. Some of them didn't. His wife, Simone, was a civil rights attorney at a firm downtown. She kept her maiden name. She traveled a lot. The weekend our story takes place, she was at a conference in Chicago, texting him photos of the Riverwalk and telling him to remember to eat something besides cereal for dinner. That Saturday morning, Cameron took a phone call at his kitchen counter, coffee in hand, laptop open. The call was with a woman named Eleanor Grant, who worked for him. We'll come back to her. For now, all you need to know is that Cameron said one sentence into the phone before he hung up. Let's push the Charlotte closing to Thursday. Remember that sentence. It's going to mean something later. Now meet Margaret Ashford. Maggie, to her friends. 43 years old. Lived at Parker Ridge for 6 years with her husband Bradley, a regional sales manager for a medical supply company. No children, 2 standard poodles. A kitchen with a marble island she had personally selected from a showroom in Charlotte. Maggie held 3 titles in her community: board member of the Homeowners Association, captain of the Neighborhood Watch, administrator of the official Parker Ridge Estates Facebook page. In the past 12 months, she had posted 312 times. Most of the posts were photos of unfamiliar cars parked on her street, with the caption, "Anyone know this vehicle? Seems off." Maggie liked rules. She liked schedules. She liked knowing every face in the neighborhood. And she had a particular way of phrasing her suspicions that always stopped just short of saying the quiet part out loud. 2 weeks before the pool incident, at a welcome committee meeting, Maggie had asked the room a question. She asked it casually, politely, with a little laugh. Has anyone actually met the family that bought the Thornberry house? They paid cash, I heard. Cash? I mean, who does that anymore? Nobody answered her. One neighbor looked at the floor. Another excused herself to get more coffee. Outside, on the other side of the bay window, a landscaper named Silas Monroe was watering the hydrangeas. He had worked at Parker Ridge for 14 years. He heard every word Maggie said. He didn't react. He just kept watering. Silas knew something about Cameron that Maggie didn't. He had been on site 3 years earlier, the morning the first shovel broke ground at Parker Ridge Estates. He had stood in the back of the crowd and watched a younger version of Cameron Parker shake hands with the mayor of Raleigh. He had taken a photo of the event on his flip phone and saved it in a folder on his computer at home. He didn't say any of this at the welcome committee meeting. It wasn't his place. Now, the pool. Saturday afternoon, 94 degrees. Cameron grabbed a towel, his key fob, a paperback copy of a biography he'd been trying to finish for a month, a glass of sweet tea with too much ice. He walked 2 blocks down Linden Court in flip-flops and shorts because it was 94 degrees and he paid his HOA dues and the water looked good. He didn't know Maggie was already at the pool, and Maggie didn't know who he was. Cameron swiped his key fob at the gate. The little light blinked green. The latch clicked. He pushed through and walked into a wall of chlorine and sunscreen and the soft splash of kids at the shallow end. There were maybe a dozen people at the pool that afternoon. A retired couple reading under an umbrella. A young mother with a toddler and floaties. 2 teenage girls in matching sunglasses pretending not to look at their phones. And Maggie Ashford, at a corner lounger, in a white cover-up and oversized shades, talking to her sister-in-law. Cameron didn't see her right away. He set his towel on a chair, slipped off his flip-flops, and stepped into the shallow end. Maggie saw him immediately. Her conversation stopped mid-sentence. Her sister-in-law, sensing the silence, looked up, then looked over, then looked down again, fast, like she didn't want to be part of whatever was coming. "Did he come in through the service entrance?" Maggie said, loud enough to carry. Cameron didn't answer. He slid into the water, grabbed his raft, flipped it open, and settled onto it on his back. He opened his book. Chapter 12. He had been trying to get to Chapter 12 for 2 weeks. He got about 3 sentences in. "Excuse me." He looked up. Maggie was standing at the pool's edge directly above him, arms folded, jaw set. "I don't recognize you," she said. "Are you a guest of a homeowner?" "I'm a homeowner." "Which house?" "The one on Linden Court." "Which one on Linden Court?" "The big one, number 12. She laughed, a short, dry bark, no humor in it. "That house just sold 3 weeks ago, to a cash buyer. I'd know if it was you." "It was me." "Uh-huh." She didn't move. "Show me your fob." He considered it for a second. He was floating, on his back, reading a book, at a pool he'd paid for, in a community he'd built. A grown woman he'd never met was asking to inspect his identification before she would allow him to continue existing in the water. He sighed, paddled over to the edge, reached into the pocket of his shorts, handed her the key fob. She took it between 2 fingers, held it up to the sun, and examined it like it was a counterfeit bill. "Anyone could have one of these," she said. "Ma'am, anyone." "Are you finished?" She flicked the fob back at him. It clattered onto the concrete. He had to reach up and get it. He went back to his book. This is the part of the story where most people would have gotten out of the water, dried off, gone home, avoided the conflict, waited for a day when Maggie Ashford wasn't at the pool. Cameron didn't do that. And I want you to notice why. Because Cameron Parker had walked onto that deck like any other American should be able to walk onto a pool deck he paid for. And he wasn't about to let one woman's suspicion reorganize his Saturday afternoon. Maggie wasn't finished. She walked away from the pool, crossed the patio in quick, angry strides, and disappeared into the clubhouse. 2 minutes later, she came back out. Behind her, at a slower pace, was a thin man in his 60s in a pale blue polo shirt. His name was Gerald Hollins. He was the president of the Parker Ridge Homeowners Association, and he had been dreading this exact walk since the moment Maggie came through the clubhouse door. Gerald stopped 12 feet from the pool's edge. He looked at Cameron. His face went white. Not pale. White. The color drained out of him the way color drains out of a man who has just realized he is standing at the top of a staircase he is about to fall down. "Gerald," Maggie said, "I need you to remove this individual from the premises. He's refusing to leave. He's refusing to verify homeownership." Gerald's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "Maggie," his voice was thin. "Maggie, could you come here for a second? Let's talk in the office, just for a minute." "Why?" "Maggie, please." "Why, Gerald?" This is actually fine. This is a misunderstanding. A significant misunderstanding. Just come with me." Maggie turned her whole body to face him. "Gerald, I'm the neighborhood watch captain. I elected you to your position. I am telling you on the record that I do not recognize this individual, that he cannot produce verification satisfactory to me, and that I expect you, as HOA president, to do your job." Gerald looked at Cameron, then at Maggie, then at the ground. He didn't do his job. He mumbled something about letting the process work and stepped backward, like he was backing away from a fire he didn't want to be caught near. And that's when Maggie raised her phone. She turned on the camera. She flipped it to selfie mode. She centered her own face in the frame. "Hi everyone, it's Maggie. I'm at the Parker Ridge Community Pool, and we have a situation. We have an unauthorized individual who refuses to leave, who cannot verify residency, and, as you can see, management here is refusing to act. So I'm documenting this in real time, for the safety of all of us." She swung the camera around and pointed it down at Cameron. His face, his body, his book. Full screen, live. Cameron lowered his sunglasses. "Ma'am, please stop filming me. If you have nothing to hide, sweetheart, you have nothing to worry about." She zoomed in. "I want you to pause here, because this is the moment where, for a black man in America, the clock starts ticking in a different way. Not the clock on his Saturday afternoon. The clock on whether he gets home tonight. A white woman is filming him. A white woman has a phone in one hand and is dialing with the other. And no one, not the retired couple under the umbrella, not the young mother, not the HOA president, not the 2 teenage girls. No one is saying a word in his defense. Cameron knew that clock. He had known it since he was 9 years old. He did not get out of the pool. He did not argue. He did not raise his voice. He spoke to the camera directly, and he spoke slowly because he wanted the audio to be clean. "My name is Cameron Parker. I own a home at this property. I have produced my key fob to this woman. I am not leaving. If she calls the police, I will wait for them." Calmly. Maggie was already dialing. "Yes, hi, 911? I need the police at the Parker Ridge Community Pool immediately. There's a man here who is refusing to identify himself, who is not a resident, and who is becoming aggressive toward me and toward our HOA president. Yes, please hurry." He was floating on a raft, in swim trunks, reading a biography, out at the fence line, maybe 30 feet from the pool, the landscaper Silas Monroe had stopped watering the hedges. He had heard Maggie's voice carry across the patio. He looked. He saw Cameron in the water. He recognized him immediately. The same man he had photographed at a groundbreaking ceremony 3 years earlier. Silas did not yell. Silas did not wave. Silas did something much quieter. He pulled out his phone, and he started filming Maggie. 6 minutes later, the sirens came. 2 cruisers, 4 doors opening, 2 officers. The first out of his car was Officer Caleb Whitaker, 26 years old, 8 months on the force. His hand drifted toward his belt before he even saw the scene. The second was Sergeant Evelyn Holloway, 19 years on the job. Her hand did not drift toward her belt. Her eyes swept the pool area, the lounge chairs, the retired couple now pretending very hard to read, Maggie standing victorious at the edge with her phone still recording, Gerald Hollins hovering behind her with his hand over his mouth, and finally, a black man in the water, floating, with a book face down on his chest. Sergeant Holloway's jaw tightened. She had been called to this exact kind of scene before. She had filed the paperwork. She had watched careers get ruined over calls like this one. She looked at Officer Whitaker. She looked at Maggie. She looked back at Cameron. Something in her face said, "Not today. Not on my shift." She took 1 step forward. And the afternoon, which up until now had been a bad Saturday, became something else entirely. Officer Whitaker spoke first. His voice was a little too high, a little too fast. "Sir, I need you to step out of the pool. Slowly. Keep your hands where I can see them." Cameron paddled to the edge, set the book on the concrete, pulled himself up. Water ran off him in long silver lines. He reached for his towel, slowly, narrating every movement. "My towel is on this chair. My ID and my key fob are in the black bag on the second lounger. May I retrieve them?" "I'll get the bag, sir. Don't move." Whitaker walked past Cameron and picked up the bag himself, unzipped it, pulled out the wallet. He didn't ask for permission. He didn't have to. Cameron hadn't denied it, but he also didn't wait for it. Sergeant Holloway saw it. Her jaw tightened a second time. She said nothing in that moment. She filed it. Whitaker flipped the driver's license over, checked the address. His face did something small and uncomfortable. The address on the license matched the house on Linden Court. Maggie was still filming, still narrating, still announcing to her audience that a suspicious individual is being identified by law enforcement at this time. Sergeant Holloway turned to her. "Ma'am, I need you to stop recording and lower the phone." "This is public. I have every right." "I'm not asking you to delete anything. I'm asking you to lower the phone while I conduct this conversation. Please." Maggie lowered the phone 3 inches. The camera kept rolling. Holloway turned to Cameron. Her voice changed, quieter, more level. "Mr. Parker, are you willing to let us verify your home ownership through the HOA office right now so we can clear this up?" "I'd prefer that, yes." "Thank you." She turned to Gerald Hollins, who had not moved in 4 minutes. "Mr. Hollins, can I speak with you for a moment? In the clubhouse." Gerald nodded like a man being offered a lifeboat. They walked away. 20 feet. Then out of earshot. Holloway spoke first. Gerald spoke for a long time. She did not take notes. She did not need to. When he finished, her eyes closed, just for 1 full second, and then opened again. She walked back to the pool. She did not arrest Cameron. She did not ask him to leave. She did not issue a warning. She looked at Maggie for a long, flat moment and said, very quietly, "Ma'am, I think you should sit down." Maggie didn't sit down, but the phone came all the way down. The officers left without writing a citation. No report was filed against Cameron. Sergeant Holloway told Maggie, in a voice so professional it was almost gentle, that a formal statement can be taken at the station if you choose to proceed with this complaint. Then she got in her cruiser and drove out of Parker Ridge Estates slowly, because she was thinking. Cameron gathered his things. He did not say another word at the pool. He walked the 2 blocks home in wet swim trunks, dripping onto the sidewalk, his book under his arm. He unlocked his front door. He sat down at his kitchen island. He called his wife. "Simone." "Cam, what's wrong?" "I need to tell you something." He told her, calmly, in order, nothing left out. Simone was silent for 11 seconds. Then she asked 2 questions. The first one was, "Are you safe?" The second one was, "Do we have it all on video?" "I believe so, and I think there's more footage we don't have yet." "Get it. Get all of it. Don't post anything. Don't say anything public. Call Adrian." Adrian Vaughn was Cameron's personal attorney. He called her next. She picked up on the second ring. She listened. She did not interrupt. When he finished, she said one sentence. "Cameron, do not speak publicly. Do not post. Do not confront. I will handle the record requests tonight. We are going to do this by the book." His third call was to a woman named Eleanor Grant, his chief operating officer. The same Eleanor from Saturday morning, the one who was supposed to push the Charlotte closing to Thursday. Eleanor was quiet for 10 full seconds after he finished. Then she said, "Cameron, you built this community. Every stone in that pool deck was poured by a company on your balance sheet. We're going to handle this. Not the fast way, the right way." "I know." "One more thing." "Yes?" "You own the scale, Cameron. That's why I have to be careful not to touch it." He hung up. Meanwhile, Maggie Ashford was in her kitchen, triumphant, uploading the unedited Facebook Live video to her community page. By 6 p.m., it had 412 views. By midnight, 3,400. By sunrise, 28,000. And somewhere in the comments, pinned to the top, was a single line from a user she didn't recognize. It read, "Maggie, do you know who that man is?" She scrolled past it. She did not yet know that Sergeant Evelyn Holloway was already home at her kitchen table, typing an incident report on her personal laptop. She was using very careful language. At the bottom of the report, in the flags field, she had already checked the box marked Internal Review Recommended. Sunday morning, 6:02 a.m. Maggie Ashford's phone buzzed on the nightstand and did not stop. She unlocked it. She saw the numbers. 847 comments on her Facebook video. 62 private messages. 1 email from a reporter at the Raleigh News and Observer. She sat up, the sheets still warm around her. Her husband Bradley was already awake, standing in the bedroom doorway, a mug of coffee in one hand, his phone in the other. He had been standing there a while. He did not hand her the coffee. He set it down on the dresser. "Maggie?" "What?" "Who did you call the police on yesterday?" "Some trespasser at the pool." "Maggie." "What Bradley?" "That man. His name is Cameron Parker." "I don't know who that is." Bradley stared at her for 3 full seconds. Then he said something she would replay in her head for the rest of her life. Go to the window. Look at the stone sign at the entrance of this neighborhood. Read it out loud. Then come back and tell me you don't know who that is. She didn't go to the window. She opened her laptop. She typed in the Google search bar 4 words: Parker Ridge Estates owner. The first result was a Raleigh Business Journal article from 3 years earlier. Local developer Cameron Parker breaks ground on 38-acre community. Parker Ridge Estates will anchor new wave of master-planned neighborhoods in Wake County. She scrolled. There was a photograph. A younger Cameron Parker in a charcoal suit, holding a ceremonial shovel, standing beside the mayor of Raleigh, smiling. And just behind his left shoulder, in the second row, was a face she recognized instantly. Gerald Hollins, her HOA president. 3 years ago. Shaking Cameron Parker's hand, Gerald had known. Gerald had always known. Gerald had known the instant he walked onto that pool deck. He had tried to pull her aside, and she had called him weak, and she had demanded he do his job, and he had backed away from her because he was not backing away from Cameron Parker. He was backing away from her. Her hand started shaking on the trackpad. The second article was 18 months old. Parker Ridge Holdings crosses $400 million valuation, expands into Charlotte market. The third was a profile piece. The Quiet Builder. How Cameron Parker spent 14 years building 3 master-planned communities without ever giving a television interview. The fourth had a photograph of her own neighborhood's stone entrance. Parker Ridge Estates. She had driven past that sign twice a day, every day, for 6 years. Her eyes had slid right over the name 1,000 times. It was not a coincidence. It was his name. He had put it there. Let me tell you what Cameron Parker actually owns. He is the founder and chief executive of Parker Ridge Holdings, a privately held real estate development firm headquartered in Raleigh. 3 master-planned communities across the Carolinas. Portfolio valuation, as of the last quarterly report, $412 million. The company doesn't just build the homes. It owns the land. It drafts the original HOA bylaws. It owns the property management firm that staffs the HOA. It owns the construction arm that poured the clubhouse foundation. It owns the LLC that operates the pool. Every key fob issued at Parker Ridge Estates was issued by a system owned by a company owned by Cameron Parker. The HOA that Maggie had weaponized, the board she had been elected to, existed because Cameron Parker's legal team had drafted it into existence in a conference room on Fayetteville Street 3.5 years ago. The property management company she had planned to call and complain to was his wholly owned subsidiary. The clubhouse Gerald had tried to pull her into was a building his construction arm had built. Every procedural lever she thought she controlled, every form she could file, every complaint she could escalate, every bylaw she could cite. All of it. Attached at the top of the chart to the man she had called the police on for floating in a pool with a book. Maggie closed the laptop. She did not move. Bradley sat down on the edge of the bed. Maggie, you need to call your lawyer. Cut across town. Cameron Parker is at his kitchen counter. Same island, same coffee. He is on a 3-way video call with Eleanor Grant and Adrian Vaughn. Eleanor speaks first. Internal review is already in motion at the police department. Sergeant Holloway flagged the report last night. The chief has it on his desk. Adrian next. HOA board meeting. Tomorrow night. Emergency session. Gerald called it an hour ago. Cameron sets down his coffee. I don't want retaliation. I don't want a public statement. The HOA runs its process. The police department runs its process. Eleanor leans in. Cameron, you own the scale. You could end this woman's entire public life before lunch. You could have her out of that house by Friday. I know. So why aren't we doing that? Here's what Cameron Parker said. Remember these words. This is the line that separates this story from every revenge fantasy you have ever watched. Because the 14-year-old black kid watching this story on his phone right now does not need to see me crush her. He needs to see the rules work. He needs to see that the same system that sent 2 squad cars to a pool for a man reading a book can also send a disciplinary letter to the woman who made the call. If I crush her personally, this becomes a story about my money. If the system does it, it becomes a story about the rules. And the rules are the only thing that protect him when I'm not in the room. Simone, off screen, from somewhere in the kitchen, said one word. Yes. Across town, Maggie Ashford opened her inbox at exactly that moment. A new email, sent 11 minutes ago, from the property management company she had trusted for 6 years. Subject line: Notice of pending disciplinary review. Parker Ridge HOA Board. She clicked the footer. The email identified the parent company. The parent company was Parker Ridge Holdings. She put the laptop down on the bed. She did not cry. She did not speak. She stared at the ceiling. And somewhere, very far below her, she felt the ground begin to give way. Monday morning, 7:15 a.m., Police Chief Daniel Sutton sat at his desk with a printed copy of Sergeant Evelyn Holloway's incident report in front of him. He had read it twice on Sunday night. He was reading it a third time now. His coffee was cold. Chief Sutton had been a cop for 28 years. He had worked narcotics, traffic, and patrol before he ever sat behind a desk. He knew what a clean report looked like. Holloway's report was clean. It was also, in his professional opinion, damning. He picked up the phone. He called his internal affairs lieutenant. He said 4 words. My office. 10 minutes. By 9 a.m., a formal internal review had been opened on 2 officers, Caleb Whitaker and Evelyn Holloway. By 9:15, a third review had been opened on the dispatch desk that took Maggie Ashford's 911 call. Chief Sutton was careful. He did not call the press. He did not leak. He followed the procedure his department had written down on paper 17 years ago and had followed inconsistently ever since. He followed it consistently now. The review focused on 3 questions. The first, did Officer Whitaker follow protocol when approaching a compliant black citizen in a swimming pool? They pulled his body camera footage. They watched it in a conference room with the blinds drawn. The answer was no. He had retrieved Cameron Parker's bag without explicit consent. He had spoken to Cameron with a cadence reserved for suspects, not witnesses. He had not, however, escalated beyond that. He had not touched his weapon. He had not raised his voice. He had made a bad call inside a bad call. The second question, had Sergeant Holloway de-escalated correctly? The answer was yes. Better than yes. She had de-escalated with the kind of quiet professional judgment that kept an ordinary Saturday afternoon from becoming a national headline. The third question was the one that kept Chief Sutton up at night. Why did the 911 dispatcher accept, at face value, a call describing a black man in swim trunks as becoming aggressive and refusing to identify himself, when he was, in fact, floating on a foam raft, reading a paperback at a pool he had paid for? They pulled the dispatch audio. They played it in the same conference room with the same blinds drawn. When it finished, nobody spoke for a long time. The civilian oversight representative, a retired judge named Harriet Langston, said one sentence. We have a training problem. Chief Sutton said one sentence back. We have a template problem. The internal review expanded on the spot. It would now examine all 911 calls received by Raleigh Dispatch over the preceding 2 years, in which the suspect description included a racial descriptor, and the responding officers found no crime on arrival. The sample was larger than anyone in the room wanted it to be. Meanwhile, at Parker Ridge Estates, the HOA disciplinary hearing was being scheduled for Wednesday night. Maggie Ashford received the formal written notice by certified mail Monday at 2 p.m. The envelope was addressed to her specifically, at the house she had lived in for 6 years. She signed for it in her front hallway. Bradley watched from the kitchen. He did not say anything. The charges were listed on the first page. There were 3. 1. Violation of HOA Bylaw 4B, prohibiting the invocation of emergency services against another resident on the basis of race, ethnicity, or unverified suspicion of residential status. 2. Abuse of the neighborhood watch captain position. 3. Creation of a hostile environment for a fellow resident. The penalty, if the board found her guilty, was listed on the second page. Removal from the board. Suspension of amenity access for a minimum of 180 days. Referral for civil review. Maggie called her lawyer, a local attorney named Theodore Westfield. He drove out to her house that afternoon and sat at her kitchen island and watched the Facebook Live video on her laptop. Then he watched the landscaper's video, which had been shared quietly to the HOA's legal counsel by Adrian Vaughn. Then he watched Cameron's body cam audio, which had been obtained through a records request filed at 11 p.m. on Saturday night. Theodore Westfield leaned back in his chair. He rubbed his eyes. He said, without looking at her, "Maggie, I'm going to be honest with you as your counsel. The video is the video. The 911 call is the 911 call. Our strategy here is not to win Wednesday night. Our strategy is to minimize what happens to you after Wednesday night. I want to fight this. You are going to lose." "I want to fight it, Theodore." He looked at her for a long moment. "All right, we fight it. And then we lose. And then we try to save the house." Wednesday night, 7 p.m., the Parker Ridge Clubhouse. The disciplinary hearing was held in the main meeting room. 5 HOA board members at the front, 2 chairs at the complainants' table for Maggie and Theodore, the property management representative in the second row, a local newspaper reporter named Harper Quinlan in the third row, taking notes in a spiral-bound notebook, and seated all the way in the back, in the last row, in a plain navy blazer, not saying a word, was Adrian Vaughn. Cameron Parker was not there. He had declined, in writing, to attend. He had declined to submit a victim impact statement. He had declined to send a representative to speak on his behalf. His written statement to the board, delivered through Adrian, was 4 sentences long. The evidence speaks for itself. The board should apply its own bylaws to its own member in the manner it would apply them to any other resident. I do not need to be present for that application. Please proceed. That statement was read aloud by Gerald Hollins at the beginning of the hearing. Gerald's hands shook as he read it. He stopped twice to clear his throat. When he finished, the room was silent for a full 4 seconds. Theodore Westfield stood up and presented Maggie's defense. He was professional. He was thorough. He argued she had acted out of sincere concern for the community. He argued that the neighborhood watch role, by its nature, required vigilance. He argued that mistakes of identity were regrettable, but not by themselves evidence of discriminatory intent. He spoke for 19 minutes. When he finished, the board chair, a retired pediatric nurse named Harriet Beauchamp, asked Maggie to take the stand. Maggie sat down. She smoothed her skirt. She began her statement. She described herself as a volunteer. She described the pool as an amenity she had always taken seriously. She described her actions as a mistake in identification made in the interest of community safety. She did not apologize. She did not say the name Cameron Parker. Not once. When she finished, Harriet Beauchamp closed her binder, folded her hands, and looked at Maggie for a moment before asking her exactly one question. Mrs. Ashford, if a white man you did not personally recognize had been floating on that raft on Saturday afternoon, reading a book, would you have called 911? The room went absolutely still. Maggie opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. I would have handled it differently. That's not a yes or no, Mrs. Ashford.
I would have asked more questions before...
That's not a yes or no. Silence. And then, very quietly, Maggie Ashford said the word that ended her public life in Parker Ridge Estates. No. No what, Mrs. Ashford? No, I would not have called. Harriet Beauchamp wrote one line in her notes. She did not look up. She said, Thank you, Mrs. Ashford. You may step down. Sergeant Evelyn Holloway was called next. She did not editorialize. She read directly from her incident report. She described the scene she had arrived at. She described Maggie's demeanor. She described Cameron's demeanor. She described Officer Whitaker's overstep with the bag, openly, on the record, in front of her own department's representative, who was sitting in the front row. Her final sentence to the board was, In my 19 years of service, I have rarely seen a complainant's narrative diverge more completely from the physical scene on arrival. The landscaper's video was played next, 90 seconds, on the wall-mounted screen, in high definition. The whole room watched in silence. Maggie's voice, clear as glass through the speakers. Anyone could have one of these. The fob hitting the concrete. Cameron's calm voice from the water. Are you finished? Maggie, pinching her nose, stepping back, saying, I can smell you from here. The camera phone going up. The 911 call being placed over the body of a black man floating on a raft with a book face down on his chest. When the video ended, nobody in the room moved. Harper Quinlan, the reporter, underlined something in her notebook. The board went into executive session. The clock on the wall said 8:41 p.m. The clock said 9:23 p.m. when they came back. Harriet Beauchamp read the ruling. Her voice was steady. Margaret Ashford was found in violation of Bylaw 4B. She was removed from the Homeowners Association Board, effective immediately. Her neighborhood watch captain position was terminated. Her administrator privileges on the community Facebook page were revoked. Her pool and clubhouse access was suspended for 180 days. She was formally referred to the Property Management Company for civil review, which, per the bylaws, could include additional financial penalty or, in extreme cases, forced sale under covenant violation. There was no cheering, no applause. There was, instead, a long silence. This was the tone Cameron Parker had asked for. This was the ending he had shaped, without entering the room. At the same time, 6 miles away in downtown Raleigh, Chief Daniel Sutton was holding a short, carefully worded press conference outside the police department headquarters. He announced 3 things. Officer Caleb Whitaker would enter a 312-day probationary period with mandatory retraining. The 911 dispatch intake protocols would be rewritten within 90 days, in consultation with a newly formed civilian oversight panel, and the department would begin a full review of all similar complaints filed over the preceding 2 years. Chief Sutton did not say Cameron Parker's name. Not once. His closing remark, delivered to the 3 cameras present, was this: "A homeowner in this city, a taxpayer, a neighbor, a man who was doing nothing but floating in a pool with a book, came very close on Saturday to having his afternoon turned into a felony arrest record. The call that got him there fit an old and lazy template. That template ends today. It should have ended decades ago." The cameras held on him. He walked back inside. This is the sound of a system deciding it is tired of being wrong. Maggie Ashford walked out of the clubhouse at 9:31 p.m. Bradley was already in the car, engine running, headlights on. She got in. She did not speak until they pulled into their own driveway 4 blocks away. She said, "I didn't think it was about race." Bradley looked at her in the dark. "I know, Maggie. That was the problem." 3 weeks after the pool incident, Harper Quinlan's story ran in the Raleigh News and Observer on a Thursday morning. It was picked up by the Charlotte Observer by Thursday afternoon. It ran on a national wire by Friday. It was never a wealth story. It was never a revenge story. It was a story about a system correcting itself in front of witnesses. Parker Ridge Holdings issued exactly one public statement. It was written by Adrian Vaughn, approved by Cameron personally, and it was 82 words long. Mr. Parker declines to comment on the individual involved in this matter. He has confidence in the HOA disciplinary process, in the Raleigh Police Department's internal review, and in the ongoing community dialogue about equitable enforcement of residential covenants. He remains committed to the Parker Ridge Estates community, as a resident, as a neighbor, and as the builder of the neighborhood he now lives in alongside his family. That was it. No interviews, no podium, no emotional press conference. Now, let me lay out one by one what landed on Margaret Ashford's life. Her 180-day amenity suspension was entered into the HOA's permanent record. Pool, clubhouse, fitness center, community events, all suspended. The Civil Review referred her case to a court-approved diversity and de-escalation program. Attendance was made a formal condition of her future standing in the community. She was required to pay the course fee personally, $3,600. She did not contest it. Her community Facebook page, the one she had administered for 6 years, the one where she had posted 312 times in 12 months, was reassigned to a new moderator by the HOA on day 11. She lost access that morning, without warning. Her personal Facebook account, separately, was demonetized by the platform for harassment policy violations. Her live video was taken down at her own request. By then, it had been archived by 11,000 viewers. 41 of her prior posts were flagged by neighbors and removed for cause. She deleted the account on day 14. Officer Caleb Whitaker completed his retraining. He also requested a private meeting with Cameron Parker. Cameron agreed. The meeting took place in a conference room at a neutral office building. No press, no cameras, no recording. It lasted 23 minutes. Nobody will ever know exactly what was said. What is known is that Officer Whitaker left the room with red eyes. He told Sergeant Holloway in the parking lot afterward, "He didn't yell at me. I almost wish he had." The dispatch protocol rewrite was completed in 61 days. The final document required dispatchers to ask 3 specific verification questions before upgrading a non-emergency complaint to an urgent response dispatch. Internally, at the department, the protocol was informally called the Parker Ridge Protocol. The department declined to use that name publicly at Cameron's private request. The document itself was renamed the Raleigh Call Integrity Protocol before publication. Gerald Hollins, HOA president, submitted a letter of resignation on day 19. His letter cited, in his own words, "a failure of leadership on my part the afternoon of the pool incident." He acknowledged, on the record, that he had recognized Cameron Parker the moment he walked onto the deck and had failed to correct Maggie Ashford when she demanded he enforce a rule against a man he knew owned the neighborhood. Cameron Parker sent Gerald a handwritten note 2 days later. 3 sentences. "Thank you for your honesty. The next president should be someone who has learned from his own failure. You may be that person. Don't decide today." Gerald kept the note in the top drawer of his desk. He read it twice a week for the rest of the year. A local nonprofit, with no Parker connection, no Parker board members, no Parker funding, announced a scholarship program inspired by the incident. They named it, carefully, the Saturday Afternoon Fund. The name was a reference to the single, simple detail at the heart of the story. A man should be allowed to read a book by a pool on a Saturday afternoon. The fund supported civil rights legal clinics at 2 historically black law schools in the Carolinas. Cameron donated anonymously in the first week. 11 of his Parker Ridge neighbors over the following 3 months made their own anonymous donations. Nobody orchestrated that. Nobody asked for it. It just happened. Cut, finally, to the pool. Cameron Parker is back. Same lounger, same raft, same book, same sweet tea. Late afternoon light. 2 children run past and wave at him. He waves back. He lowers his sunglasses. He opens his book to chapter 12. He finally gets past chapter 12. He did not need to win. He only needed the rules to finally apply. 6 months later, Parker Ridge Estates introduced a new tradition. They called it Neighbors' Day. On one Saturday in October, every household in the community opened its front door and walked, in person, to meet every other household. Face, name, handshake. The idea came from a board member, a woman named Claudia Whitmore, who had been appointed interim HOA president after Gerald's resignation. Cameron Parker did not suggest the tradition. He simply showed up with his wife Simone and a pitcher of sweet tea, and he introduced himself to neighbors he had not yet met. Most of them already knew his name by then. All of them shook his hand. The Saturday Afternoon Fund, in its first 6 months, raised $182,000. It paid for 34 clinic hours at 2 historically black law schools. 2 of those hours went to a young black man who had been harassed at a public swimming pool in Savannah, Georgia, and who needed help filing his own complaint. He never met Cameron. He never knew who had donated anonymously to the fund that paid for his legal clinic. That's how Cameron wanted it. Sergeant Evelyn Holloway was promoted to lieutenant. She was named chair of the new Civilian Police Advisory Panel. She still keeps a printed copy of her original incident report in the top drawer of her desk. She doesn't read it often, but she knows exactly where it is. Officer Caleb Whitaker is still on the force. His probation ended on schedule. He now trains new recruits. He begins every first day class with the same question. What would you do if you arrived at a pool and the person you were sent to confront was reading a book? Gerald Hollins did not run for the HOA presidency again. He did, however, rejoin the board 2 years later as a member at large. He was elected by his neighbors. Nobody blocked his nomination. That is what the word neighbor is supposed to mean. Margaret Ashford and her husband, Bradley, sold their house at the end of the 180-day suspension. It was their own decision. They moved 3 counties west. Maggie does not have a Facebook account anymore. Bradley, one mutual friend reported, has started reading more, and Cameron Parker is building a new community outside Asheville. It is called, at his specific direction, simply the Brookfield Community. No Parker name on the sign, no founder's statue, just a pool and a clubhouse and a list of bylaws with Section 4B printed in bold on the very first page. So let me ask you, have you ever been in a room, a store, a pool, a parking lot, where you watched somebody get assumed guilty for no reason at all right in front of you? What did you do? And, more honestly, what do you wish you had done? Drop your answer in the comments below. Because the thing that changes this pattern in America is not the famous people, and it is not the powerful people. It is the witnesses who decide, quietly, that they are tired of being quiet. If this story moved you, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to see it, and subscribe, because the next story is about a quiet moment of justice you won't want to miss. I'll see you there. OMG, like, real power isn't crushing people. It's letting the rules do their job. He could have destroyed her in a second, but chose justice instead. That's class, fronter. Be the person who raises others up, not tears them down.